Yes, check, check. Can't hear me? Check, check. Hello. All right, I'm just going to have to speak loudly. Tell me if it comes on. Can you hear me now? Okay, good. Thank you. So, wow, what an incredible event. Does everybody agree? I'll tell you guys, I've had the privilege of seeing kind of the early hand of this, and Jess and Kai, these guys are killing it. I mean, it's amazing, the volunteer, just sheer brute labor, and of course, everybody who's also helped out. So I feel deeply honored to be here, and I just feel like I share that with the rest of you, so I want to sort of reflect that back to you, Jess and Kai. So my name's Ross Evans, and I think I'm up here because of my work with bicycles. And so I've done this thing, World Bike and Xtracycle. We've had some great coverage in the world, but honestly, I don't really know what I'm all about. I'm trying to figure that out, and I feel like maybe that's something that some of you are dealing with as well. So is anybody else out there trying to figure out who they are? Anybody else can you figure out what's the title to put on your business card? That's my personal favorite. But anyway, so I showed up at TED, and this is sort of the story of a bunch of random things, but I want to share it with you because I think it might help in your process. So I didn't end up with a clicker. That's funny. Where is it? Back in here? I need a clicker too. Which one is it? This one? Either one. Okay. This is a theme. We like themes, right? Okay, so here we go. Awesome. Here I am. Play. Sound would be good. No sound? And, I'm saying brilliant things about some references to a talk that was given.
Like she said,
there we go.
I just have to show up for my job, right? Okay. So if you would, stomp your feet. Might help me get through.
My heart's beating right now, jeez. Okay, thank you.
Nice job.
Oh, thank you too.
Your genie showed up for you.
Genie showed up. Thank you, Genie.
So a random clip, and I thank you for humoring me and playing that. It was actually quite a great moment for me, and it sort of has to do with this notion of merging the things that we value and how they come together. So I thought I would share some stories from my life and sort of how that's played out, and hopefully a sort of a compass that I've been playing with. It's a little bit of a test drive here in the spirit of prototyping. So if you'll hang with me, I'm open to your feedback, as well as happy. I brought my rope along. If anybody at the after thing wants to learn how to do it, I'd be happy to show you. So anyway, there's this is not. Oh, I pushed the wrong button. Sorry.
I was inspired.
Oh, okay, great. So. Open screen, right? So we can start with the blank slate. Holy shift is this word that came to me, and I don't know. It's going to look kind of funny, but I'm going to throw it up there, kind of like it came out like a genie. It was like this crazy thing. Holy shift. What's sacred to you? What do you love? Holy, like these guys running around in color, right? It's like this party, and it's like, how do we merge that with making positive change? That's the shift. So holy shift. How do we do that? So what I'm going to try to do today is share with you my process. And I've sort of, basically, like I said, I'm at a crossroads. I don't know what's next. Xtracycle was great. World Bike is great. They're still going, right? I'm sort of supposed to still do those and figure out what's next. So maybe you can relate to that. But in this process, I've thought about this in a way to say, well, what's a metric? What's a compass? What's a way that we can kind of use as a handrail to figure this out? And there were these three components that kind of kept coming up for me. And so I want to tell you some stories about that. But at first, I want to just share with you what they are. So passion, it may be really obvious. It's back to that holy, the thing that you love. What do you do when you're just light up and you're just like, oh, I love this, right? So that's passion. Purpose, it's a little bit more difficult. I'd say it's probably the most difficult one, and I'll go into that a little bit more, but it has to do with, if you know Jim Collins, I was really inspired by his concept of the hedgehog, right, and these intersecting three circles, and what we're searching for is this sweet spot in the middle of these three things, and purpose is the one that's sort of like, I believe we've got something we're built for, right? I don't know if you have a hunch, like in your gut, that like there's something that comes easily. It's like, it's the thing that when you do it, time goes away. Maybe you've heard of the concept of flow. It's like that. Purpose in my world, in my sort of framework here that I want to share with you, is that, how many people here have a sense for that? I think it's pretty difficult to figure out. Yeah, so there's some people. What I would say is we figure that out along the way, and I'm going to show you some pictures and tell some stories about that. Contribution really is where it comes down to this interaction with the world. It's how we provide value. And again, in my worldview, in my idealistic worldview, which I actually have seen play out again in my life, and I sort of want to be an example of that for you, is that when we provide enough value, the world takes care of us. So let's get started. Let's see how this works. So I wanted to share something first, which is essentially, you missed a little bit of the quote. I was talking about Liz Gilbert. Did anybody see Liz Gilbert's talk on TED.com? Check it out. Wow, not that many people. So check it out. It's amazing. I love it from 2009. She was amazing. And she talked about our genius and this idea of like this muse. That's where she was saying your genie showed up. Is like your muse. That was kind of the reference. And what I'm talking about with that is that when we step into this place of our true authenticity, it's more likely to show up. That's, again, my hypothesis. So when I say authenticity equals impact, I'm clear that we want to make an impact in the world. How many of you, we're here, this is the TED audience, right? We want to make an impact. Would you just yeah, we got one person. I got to get another one. How many people want to say, awesome, okay, good, thank you, okay. I know I'm not talking to deaf ears here. So the idea is, like, when we find that intersection point, when we find that center of the three circles, we're going to make our most positive, beneficial impact. And I feel like where we can look to that is when we're kids. And as kids, we were uninhibited, right? I mean, how many of you remember, like, just playing, like, full out, and it sort of dwindles over time. And another TEDster, Ken Robinson, if you haven't heard his talk on creativity in kids in schools, like, he basically says, like, the school system beats it out of you, right? I mean, it's sort of, like, systematized to make sure you're not creative by the time you end up in my position. And yet, so we have to kind of be crusaders of our own authenticity. And so I'm going to share with you, this is me. I don't have any cute pets. I tried my best with this one. But the basic thing is, this is my first bike. I grew up in Tucson, and Tucson's an amazing town. It sits at the base of these beautiful mountains, the Catalinas, and my parents still live in this house. It's a little cul-de-sac you can't quite see there in the corner, but desert. And this bike, I loved it. I don't know, how many of you, do you remember your first bike? For a lot of people, it's a really a profound thing. But even if you don't remember the bike, maybe you remember the experience of freedom that you got from it, or just the sheer joy. For me, I could use it to ride and sneak off and get candy at the store, and I could ride over to my best friend Ryan's house, and I was just like this freedom. I mean, I don't know, like freedom. We talk about freedom. This bike was what that meant, and I loved it. I really did. It was like a true sense of joy, and so in riding this bike, I got that great experience. But what happened was one day. A friend of my older sister, or this boy, was hanging out, and he saw me ride this bike. I was so excited. I was like, showing him my moves, and he's like, that's a girl's bike. And I was like devastated, My mom says I didn't want to ride it anymore. I'm like, what? This is my pride and my joy. But all of a sudden, this elder figure. So it was, again, that process where we learn what's right and wrong. And so, well, of course, what I did is I asked for Christmas a BMX bike. This is what's it meant to be like a manly or boyly man or something. I don't know exactly. But the basic concept was, this started a process for me of trying to figure out what's authentic for me. And what I've realized is actually it was that first experience when I was still in that state of authentic me as a young kid, before I was kind of influenced and tried to respond to what other people thought. And I realized that, back to that notion of purpose, I think this is part of our process. When we figure out our purpose is when we find that place where our authentic truth is, right? And for me, it actually played out in this cool way that comes back to Xtracycle. So what I think is so cool, this is Madeline riding Radish. Radish is our bike that we make. There's one out in the lobby if you want to check it out. But what I think is so cool is, anybody notice? This is a girl's frame. I like to ride this bike. I think it's funny, it comes back around, right? That my first authentic experience of joy riding a girl's bike, it turns out it actually is really handy. If you got a bunch of stuff on the back, or your girlfriend or something, you can step over. You don't have to kick her in the face as you get on your bike, It's actually really handy. So, to me, how do we get trapped in these ideas of what's a girl's bike and what's a boy's bike? Let's work at this and say, again, why does a bike need to be short? That was the whole premise of Xtracycle. And World Bike was to say, actually, if you're not going to race and want to be all hunched over and, whatever that's all about. Like, I mean, how many of you in here, like, need, like, to get to the grocery store in 2.5 minutes versus 3? I mean, it's not that big of a difference to me. So I figure we can make the bike a little longer, sit upright, look around, it's kind of a great thing. So contribution, again, it's like for all of us contribute in different ways. And for me, I learned early on that this was kind of a high experience for me. And so this is a roof that I faced as a junior hire. I went on this church service project to Southern California, and it's called the Sierra Service Project. And we a group of us young, sort of idealistic kids, descended upon this sort of Native American reservation, and this was a house. And we actually spent 4 days under the sun scooping just layer upon layer. I think it was 8 layers of shingle and tar off of the roof. To expose it enough so that we could put on this roof. And what I experienced in this was a true love. It was crazy hot. It was hard work, hauling shingles up and pounding and shoveling. And yet for me, it was my first experience of truly, giving my all to something and having it make a difference and experience that in the lives of others. So it was a natural thing that happened when I was able to combine bicycles with service. And I went in 1995, I went to Nicaragua. And I was paired through Bikes Not Bombs, and I got some grant money from Stanford, and I went down there to do this project, and I was going to teach these guys how to fix bikes and weld. And so turns out these are amazing guys. We would sit down at lunch and have this simple meal of rice and beans, but we just really got to know each other well. And this guy on the left, Rafael, all of these guys were war-disabled veterans from the Contra War, and he, as you can see kind of underneath his ear there, as a piece of shrapnel entered his brain, and so he's not able, or hey, it's right, speaking of brains, actually, I got that back in here. So the idea was, that he couldn't be a farmer anymore if he moved in the wrong way. It could well, we maybe would know. Somebody here could analyze what would have happened to him. But anyway, the basic idea was that he was actually quite capable, and he was an amazing guy. And in the process of teaching him how to weld and how to fix bikes, we created this first concept bike. And so this was the idea. We were looking around saying, how do we make bikes that can carry the right amount of cargo, etc. And in that place in time, there was a lot of delivery of cola bottles and stuff that they needed to do with these little shops that were distributed throughout the town. And so this was a concept bike that we built. That went on to be something I picked up and I ran with. It's a long story, but I just wanted to share a couple of little pieces. This is in Senegal. Senegal is the sort of most westernmost piece of Africa, and it's an amazing place. If you've ever had a chance to go there, the people are beautiful, and it's just incredible. And what I wanted to share about this is a little shop. Actually, when I was in Nicaragua, I met my mentor, Carl Bielenberg, and he invited me to come. Actually, I kind of cajoled my way onto the trip, but essentially he let me come with him to Senegal, and he put me in touch with these guys who basically were working on metal grates for windows and stuff like that. But in essence, he got me started working with these guys, but the deeper part for me was actually sitting in the back of that shanty kind of shed-looking thing. We would sit on the ground in the dirt around this big pot of, or sort of like a metallized bowl of rice with a little bit of vegetables and fish, and you'd eat with your hand. You sort of scoop it up and into a little ball, and you're supposed to put it in a special way, and I'd never get it right. This rice would be all over my hand, and so they'd give me a spoon, sort of in pity, we would share this meal, and I feel like that was really a place where the matriarch, she would divvy out the small portions of fish to each person, and I got a sense for like connecting with people and what it means to share and be taken care of, and again, that notion of contribution where when you give it your all, like the world will take care of you. And again, that went on to South Africa, and again, trying to share somehow, how are we going to make this thing work? And this is my first experience with trying to now take this and say, okay, Sam, teach this guy how to build them in series, how to make a shop that works. And that went on to be invited by another TEDster, Martin Fisher, if you know him from Kickstart, amazing guy, and does treadle power water pumps in Kenya. And he invited us. He was really inspired by my work with bicycles, and so he invited us to start working again on trying to get these things into production in Africa, and this was a small workshop that we tried to set up, again, to teach people. All this kind of, again, came together in a way that's really, in my mind, just an incredible honor. It's, again, that finding that sweet spot in the three circles. And World Bike is essentially, you'll see here, and I have actually a prototype out front if anyone wants to either try it out or just see what it looks like in person. It's this bike, and we call it the Zoom, and the Zoom is essentially the manifestation of the kind of culmination of all this work of 15 years, and like it's basically at the right price point, the right robustness, the right color, the right all this stuff. Essentially, I'd say it's a hypothesis of what will work as we try to enter into using the bicycle as a tool for development to address the poverty alleviation, access to healthcare, and access to education. Passion seems like the most easy one. It's kind of like, what do you love, and what do you love to do? But it's interesting. I think passion comes up in funny ways, and in this case, I wanted to share a story again from my childhood. I was in a boys' choir, and I don't know if any of you had this experience, but as a young boy, singing soprano in a boys' choir is not cool. So I was not particularly cool with that, but I did it, and I don't know why exactly I stuck with it. I think I got this like tenacious thing, and I just kind of want to hang in there. But the thing actually that I realized out of this experience was we had summer camp, and we'd spend a week practicing our songs, etc. And I actually was probably the envy of a lot of my friends because we got to go on these like 6-week tours and miss school for 6 weeks, and it's probably the reason I'm not any good at math. But anyway, the point is that I had this experience of actually learning how to do rope tricks. And so you can see me here practicing my rope tricks, and I'm pretty awkward at it, but I thought this was pretty cool. Like, check this out. Like, who would have known, right? I mean, I was a totally dorky kid, like, learning this thing at the bus stop and out on the playground, but it got me on the TED stage, so, how about that? So I think, again, this idea of, like, if you can find what you love, find a way to make a contribution. I think Rick, who's here, actually going next, took this picture and sent it to me after TED last year. I thought it was kind of fitting. I'm finding the center of this circle, and I would invite you to do the same thing. Figure out what your passion is. Like, what are you truly passionate about? What's your purpose? If you spend time in the world, like, take notes on yourself, make yourself the subject of your own study, you'll find it. And in the process, again, it'll be a prototype, but you'll play with that and then contribute it. Find a way to offer it, and the world will offer something back. So I just wanted to share with you the words of Howard Thurman. He just nailed it for me when he said, don't ask yourself what the world needs. Ask yourself what makes you come alive, and go do it, because what the world needs is people who have come alive. And I just invite you to step into that place where you join me on this journey, this adventure that I call Holy Shift. Do it. Go out there, do your dream, divine your purpose, and let's make the world a better place. Thank you. Thank you.